Thanks so much, Cátia, for coming to talk to us today. So we're going to be talking about daylight saving, which most of Europe has just entered with the clocks changing at the weekend. So it seemed like a perfect time to discuss this topic. So first off, can you just tell us daylight saving, why is it such a big problem?
Hello, so thank you for inviting me to talk about this paper. And yes, daylight saving time, why is it a problem? So the main problem of daylight saving time is that, our internal clock, so our biological clock, it entrains for the sun time. And what daylight saving time is actually doing, it's increasing the discrepancy between the internal timing and the sun time. So that's why it's much more difficult for you to entrain. And what we see and what we saw in this paper is that so longer this difference between the clock time and the sun time, so shorter the sleep duration. And basically, it's one of the main messages from our paper is that as more the solar jet lag, as we call, so the difference between the solar time and the clock time, so shorter the amount of sleep that you are going to get. Because what the daylight saving time it's actually doing, it's changing the clock time 1 hour earlier. So that is making us waking up 1 hour actually earlier in accordance to solar time. And that's why usually, mainly in work days, we are sleeping less. And that's what it's showing here in delayed sleep-wake phase patients. There are actually very delayed chronotypes, extreme delayed chronotypes. And it was shown also not only with the timing, with the sleep timings, that actually they were much different, especially for the wake-up times, not mainly for sleep onset timings, but their diurnal timings actually for the patients came in daylight saving time or in standard time, they were actually very similar if we correct to solar time. Okay. So that shows that actually they are entraining to the solar time rather to the clock time.
And so as you mentioned, this was specifically looking at patients with delayed sleep-wake phase disorder. So is this something we're going to see or do see in people without that as well? Or is this something specific to patients with this disorder?
No, the only thing is that for these patients, it's actually more, it's worse. It's a little bit worse because they are more delayed. And actually, we are putting the daylight saving time, we are removing the light that actually allow us to become earlier, so that it's the morning light. And you are increasing the amount of delaying light. And by doing that, you're actually putting people more later. Yeah. That's why it's so important, because we don't have, so our periods, so our internal periods, a little bit longer than 24 hours on average. And we need that morning light in order to be entrained for the 24 hours. And when we remove that morning light, it's much more difficult for us to keep in the 24 hours, and then we become later.
All right. So what's then your kind of recommendation based on your findings?
Oh, I think the first recommendation of all is to abolish the daylight saving time and to keep the standard time for all of us, because, the days just become increasingly longer. So the amount of light that we have, that we call the photo period, it's progressively becoming bigger when we come to, spring. It's a seasonal effect. And when you include the daylight saving time, we are just doing this, going 1 hour before according to solar time and increasing the discrepancy. So the first thing would be actually to abolish it and to keep the standard time, because we are progressively adapting to the sun and to the solar exposure, and that would be the most beneficial for us. But of course, we can always try to, slowly, progressively, before starting daylight saving time, to wake up a little bit earlier and to start sleeping a little bit earlier, progressively, day by day. But as we show by the paper, we can do that. But what was really shown was that we are actually just mainly entraining to the solar time. We can do this. We can try to do these kinds of strategies that we use to re-entrain very delayed people, just like delayed sleep-wake phase patients, progressively. But it's always there. So the sun, we actually response, or our physiology, it's responding to the solar time rather than to the clock time.
Yeah, and I guess then it's just something we need to be sort of even more aware of in certain regions.
Mainly, yes. I think that's the most important thing, because when people, when we had that survey talking about which one should we choose, actually daylight saving time, so summertime or winter time, when you actually ask someone about summertime, you always would like to prefer to have summertime because you have more lights, but it's a psychological effect, because actually the amount of time that we have, so the day length, it's the same when you are in standard time or in daylight saving time. You're just artificially changing the clock time for 1 hour earlier when you are in daylight saving time. Actually, it was so they start doing that just to, trying to increase the amount of light in the evening for economical and energy savings, but it was already shown that it's not really true. And we need to be more focused in our physiology and in our biology, because that's what actually can bring us worse consequences, so future health consequences associated to this.
Okay, well, hopefully people who can make these changes start listening.
Yeah, well, hopefully. We all hope that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, great. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you very much.